Oscar winner Lupita Nyong'o is revealing a frightening encounter with disgraced movie mogul Harvey Weinstein, saying he led me into a bedroom, his bedroom, and announced that he wanted to give me a massage. She says it happened at Weinstein's mansion in Connecticut while his 3 young children were watching a movie in a soundproof screening room. I thought he was joking at first. He was not. I felt unsafe, she writes in an op-ed article for the New York Times. I began to massage his back to buy myself time. He said he wanted to take off his pants, and I headed for the door. Several months later, she says she met him for dinner at the Tribeca Grill restaurant in New York City, owned by actor Robert De Niro. He announced, "Let's cut to the chase. I have a private room upstairs where we can have the rest of our meal." He told me not to be so naive. If I wanted to be an actress, then I had to be willing to do this sort of thing. She says after she refused, he warned her, "I don't know about your career, but you'll be fine." She says she feared she had awakened a beast who could destroy her career.
The Oscar goes to Lupita Nyong'o.
Just 2 years later, she won a Best Supporting Actress Oscar for her performance in 12 Years a Slave. And the LAPD is investigating a shocking allegation that Weinstein raped an Italian model while they were attending a film festival in 2013. Here's Victoria Rocagno.
The 38-year-old model met with detectives for 2 hours and reportedly told them Harvey Weinstein showed up out of nowhere sometime after midnight and asked to come up to her room. She offered to meet him in the lobby, but soon, she says, he was knocking at her door.
He bullied his way into my hotel room. Once inside, he became very aggressive and kept asking to see me naked. He dragged me to the bathroom and forcibly raped me. It sickens me still. Weinstein has emphatically denied having non-consensual sex with anyone.
Rowena Chu is finally stepping into the light. She wanted to before, but couldn't, and she's still taking a chance. What happened that made you decide it's okay to talk?
Well, I think it was a very, very long journey. To speak today, it's another breaking of my NDA, which is still technically illegal. So it is still frightening, but I think as well as the legal repercussions, the personal repercussions to me were very powerful as a silencer.
This is a woman with the story of a time that broke her life. Daughter of Chinese immigrants, graduate of Oxford University, who fresh out of school landed a dream job in the 90s at Miramax as an assistant to Harvey Weinstein. It was supposed to be the great beginning. You have a dream.
That's right.
And you get this huge job.
Yeah.
You must have been thrilled?
Yes, absolutely. I was thrilled. I appreciated the opportunity to travel. Some of the work would focus around traveling with Harvey to various European film festivals. So overall, it was an exciting position to I felt like at a young age, we would have a say. We would, be influencing the next film that Miramax funded. Now, working for Harvey specifically was rumoured to be very difficult. We knew that he had a legendary temper. We knew that he was a difficult person to deal with. I certainly didn't go into the job thinking he's a serial rapist.
Were there any concrete tips, though, about how to sort of physically protect yourself from him?
Well, there had been rumours, of course, about, to wear more clothes around Harvey Weinstein's. I wore 2 pairs of tights as a response to those kind of jokes. And I thought, well, it won't do any harm if I've got extra layers of clothing on, and if something terrible were to happen, it may buy me some time.
That, according to Chu, was a sadly wise call. 1998, the Venice Film Festival. Chu is assigned the night shifts with Weinstein. The more senior assistant, Zelda Perkins, takes the early shifts. Perkins had warned Chu about Weinstein, but both women thought all would be okay. Chu tells us it wasn't okay.
Typically, the evening shifts were pretty difficult because I would be alone with Harvey. Zelda would not be in the room, and so there would definitely be requests for inappropriate sexual contact during that time. There is very much a sense that he would combine work that we were doing on the scripts with more personal questions and inappropriate requests, really. So, one minute he'd be asking me my view on a certain film script and whether or not I thought it was a great story and how strong the characterization was, and then the next minute he'd be asking for a massage and so on.
Is there relevance
to your ethnicity and your background in your interactions with Harvey? Did he make that an issue?
He mentioned how he liked Chinese girls because they were discreet, and he would say that in public, but then in private, you know, that would be twisted around to be, you know, that he'd never had a Chinese girl and that he wanted to try and this kind of thing. Because the subtext is really, I like your discretion because you're not going to complain about me, whatever I do to you. It's a sort of dangerous subtext. It's a dangerous subtext, I think.
Can I ask you, and again, you don't have to tell me, but can I ask you what happened on what is arguably the night?
We talked a bit about scripts. We spent some time discussing, you know, he engaged in some flattery about how I graduated with a degree in English literature from Oxford, which he very much liked to allude to also. He asked me a bit about my boyfriend. He asked me how long we'd been together and whether he was my first boyfriend and so on. And so I guess the conversation segued into the personal very quickly. He asked me for a massage. He had taken his clothes off, so he was naked. So he requested a massage from me, which I was reluctant to give him. He asked me to take off some of my layers of clothing, saying that it was warm in the hotel room or that I'd feel more comfortable if I took off more clothes. And so in that way, it was almost an insidious, you know, gradual path towards, you know, asking for more and more overt sexual favours, and so from there it led to him pinning me against the bed and asking for just one thrust and saying just one thrust and it'll all be over.
Oh my God, your head must have been swimming.
It was a pretty terrifying experience.
She says it was a lot to handle. At the first chance, she describes having a quiet, urgent word with Zelda Perkins to tell her what happened.
In fact, I think we both cried. Zelda went to confront Harvey right away, which I think was an incredibly brave thing to do. And I don't think many people in her position at 25 and as Harvey's assistant would have the courage to go down and to speak to him right away when he's at lunch with such high-profile people.
The women had a plan. Back in London, they would sound the alarm with the company, hoping Weinstein would be rebuked, forced to undergo counseling. Maybe rules would be put in place for working with women. But they say the lawyers were just interested in something different, compensation for silence. The non-disclosure agreement they signed haunts them still.
How would you characterize the silence they were seeking? Like, how sweeping was it?
Absolute. Absolute. We were told that this period of our lives would have to be considered a black hole. We could, in the lightest possible terms, refer to the fact that we had worked for Harvey Weinstein, but we weren't to go into any detail about the nature of that work or what happened subsequent to that work or the fact that there was an NDA or the fact that there was any settlement money. None of that was to be referred to. In fact, it felt so onerous that Zelda and I implicitly made a pact that we wouldn't speak to one another, and we didn't after the journey in the taxi away from the law firm once we'd signed the NDA. The next time I heard from Zelda was October 2017, and we'd signed that agreement in October 1998.
So it's almost 20 years.
Yeah, 19 years to the month that we had not spoken to one another.
Did you know when you parted in that taxi that you wouldn't talk?
I think there was a clear sense that we wouldn't remain in each other's lives because we talked about how difficult it was not to refer to this period of our lives.
But what's it like to lose the one person who stood beside you the whole time?
I think it was incredibly difficult. But not just that I had lost the only colleague that I could talk to about it, but an inability to speak to anyone in my personal life about really quite a traumatic event meant really it wasn't possible to process it.
I'm wondering how much a secret like this weighs.
Clearly a great deal, because I found it an impossible burden to bear, really, and it came to a point where I tried to kill myself a couple of times, and I really felt I was never going to get away from the secret.
You are calm, almost matter of fact about what happened, and where does that calm come from?
You know, I think being British and being Chinese, it means that I'm not necessarily too transparent. But I think that sounding calm doesn't necessarily mean it wasn't a really frightening experience.
So was the screaming inside your head?
There is screaming inside my head from at the time of the assault, absolutely. I still feel powerless. Zelda and I are now in our mid-40s, and yet there's still no remedy in the legal world, or there doesn't appear to be a remedy available to us in the legal world. Who knows what will happen with the criminal trial, but, you know, telling a story in the media publicly isn't necessarily an easy fix to everything that has taken place.
Time, the effort of journalists to find them, the launch of the Me Too movement, all of this collided to bring the two women back together again.
Zelda Perkins, Rowena Chu.
You know, I'd like to say that Zelda and Rowena are here tonight and speaking in active violation of this NDA and this settlement.
They found their voices, both choosing to break their NDAs. It all might intimidate some back into the shadows, but not Rowena Chu, not anymore.
How did Harvey Weinstein respond to you telling your story?
His lawyer issued a statement saying that Harvey Weinstein and I had engaged in a 6-month physical consensual relationship, and that Harvey was looking for ways to take legal action against me for breaking my NDA.
Is it worth it for you?
We'll see. I'm on a long journey. I am, you know, encouraged by the voices that lift me up from other victims, but also from people who are silent even to this day, and they feel like I in some way speak for them. I won't know the long-term repercussions of speaking out for a long time to come, but I so far have no regrets.
And it's wonderful to meet you, Rowena. Thank
Lovely
you
to
very,
meet you
very
too.
much.
Thank you for your time.
I very much appreciate that.
We asked Weinstein's lawyers to respond to Rowena Chu's allegations, and we finally received this statement from his public relations company. Quote, "Neither Mr. Weinstein nor his representatives will be making any comments on these matters. I hope you can remain objective."
This story was always, in my eyes, about the abuse of power. The techniques Harvey Weinstein used are, I think, important for us all to talk about, because while they are extreme, they open a window into a set of tools available if you're that rich and that powerful and that bent on stopping dissent about you. As the world knows now, Harvey Weinstein was surrounded by allegations going back decades from women who said that he sexually harassed and assaulted them.
Do you have any advice for a young girl moving to Hollywood?
I'll get live with it. Harvey Weinstein invites you to a private party and Four Seasons stuff. Yeah.
They were described as an open secret for years in Hollywood, but they never broke, and there are a lot of reasons for that. In the fall of 2016, Harvey Weinstein became aware that a number of women were starting to talk. One of the precipitating events for that was Rose McGowan, the actress, tweeted saying that Harvey Weinstein, she heavily implied without naming him, was, in her words, her rapist. She then set off a series of events that I think she could have never fathomed. Over the course of the past year, a woman calling herself Diana Phillip of Rubin Capital Partners reached out to Rose McGowan through a literary agency working with her. All seemed very legit. They offered her a great deal of money to speak at a gala kickoff event for a women's rights campaign that they were operating, right in Rose McGowan's area of interest. As it turns out, Rubin Capital Partners was a fake front company. She was, in fact, an agent for Black Cube, this elite Israeli private intelligence firm, operating undercover using multiple identities to extract information. He assigned them to kill forthcoming stories about these allegations and to ferret out information about which women were talking. Rose McGowan was very much in the crosshairs here. She says that she was gaslit that everybody lied to her, that she was living in a world of funhouse mirrors. They secretly recorded tens of hours of conversation with her. It reads like a spy novel, but it's all true.
What's going to happen to him now?
One of the things we've been reporting on is the concerted criminal justice effort targeting Harvey Weinstein at this point. There are law enforcement agencies going after him in a very diligent way, I think partly to atone for the fact that the ball was dropped a number of times over the years where there could have been criminal proceedings. We talk about in our story Ambra Badalana Gutierrez, an Italian model who had an allegation that Harvey Weinstein groped her in 2015.
I don't feel comfortable.
Honey, don't have a fight with me in the hall. Please, I'm not going to do anything. I swear, my children. Please come in. On everything. I'm a famous guy.
I'm feeling very uncomfortable right now.
Please come in now. And 1 minute. And if you want to leave, when the guy comes with my
Why
jacket, you can go.
yesterday you touched my breast?
Oh, please, I'm sorry. Just come on. I'm used to that.
This machine that suppressed these allegations for so long had many moving parts, and one of them was legal in nature. When you look at the agreement Ambra Badalana Gutierrez signed, it is highly unusual. It specifically calls for the destruction of all evidence related to the incident. It has draconian penalties for breach. It had her sign a sworn affidavit saying that nothing chronicled in the recording that he admitted to in the recording ever happened to be released if she ever breached. You know, one lawyer I talked to with knowledge of that agreement said, "This is one of the most usurious, unethical agreements I've ever seen." This New Yorker story was the very first to report sexual assault and rape at a point in time at which Harvey Weinstein was already saying, you know, this is just harassment, this isn't so bad, I'm going to get treatment, this is going to pass. It was always apparent to me how important this was. Every woman who spoke out in our coverage did an incredibly brave thing. It was painful personally, it put them at professional risk, they put a lot on the line. The fact that this story has had the impact that it has had is, I think, deeply tied to this moment in history. My own sister spoke out against a powerful man in Hollywood. That catalyzed a lot of conversation, but it was very different then. The women who came out against Bill Cosby also faced a really aggressive level of public humiliation. And then there was Roger Ailes, and then there's been this cascade of men since. And I think what people have described as the Weinstein effect is actually a much broader swath of a moment in our culture and our conversation around these issues where finally, one story after another piling on has let people understand that they can speak and that there's strength in numbers that they didn't know existed before.
Let's go back to the Golden Globes for a second. Oprah is now being criticized for her speech that night by a very unlikely star.
Me too.
3 days after Oprah publicly supported victims of sexual assault in the wake of numerous allegations against Harvey Weinstein, singer Seal Instagrammed this meme. Showing Winfrey kissing the disgraced mogul, it reads, "When you have been part of the problem for decades, but suddenly they all think you are the solution."
Please welcome Seal!
The 54-year-old who's appeared on Oprah's show captioned his post, "Oh, I forgot, that's right, you'd heard the rumors, but you had no idea he was actually serially assaulting young starry-eyed actresses, my bad." While Weinstein maintains his innocence, Seal hasn't commented further, and Oprah has not responded.
This moment is a really powerful time for everybody to get woke.
Fans have come to her defense, pointing out Winfrey is a sexual assault survivor. They also posted pics of Seal's ex, Heidi Klum, kissing Weinstein too.
How are you?
I am
here.
Today on Ellen, Oprah was busy dealing with the aftermath of a natural disaster.
The neighbors out back, their houses are gone.
The celeb neighbors FaceTimed as Winfrey showed the devastation and rescue efforts after deadly mudslides hit their Montecito, California enclave.
We're going to do what great Americans do all the time. We're going to help each other.
Yes.
We're going to help each other out wherever
Yes, we
needed.
are.
For decades, Harvey Weinstein was Hollywood's archetypal, unstoppable movie mogul, the executive with the brains and hefty brawn to produce critically acclaimed films that always seemed to find commercial success. His company Miramax produced some of the most successful films of the past few decades, from The English Patient to Pulp Fiction to The King's Speech. Weinstein and Miramax could seemingly do no wrong as his stature grew to celestial proportions.
I just want to thank my agent, Kevin Uvain, and God, Harvey Weinstein.
Harvey's rule would meet its end, though, in 2017, when dozens of stories emerged of his years of sexual predation. Suddenly, the very same celebrities who worshipped him all turned. The strange thing is, it seems as though those uncovered secrets, well, they weren't so secret after all.
Harvey would talk to me about women that he'd had affairs with. I didn't necessarily believe them.
Everybody knows that's been the case. Everybody has stories.
You heard the rumor that he raped Rose McGowan. You heard that over and over. We've heard that for decades, and nothing was done.
You had to spend about 5 minutes with him to know that he was a bully, he was intimidating. That was his legend.
This is the rise and fall of Harvey Weinstein. A young Harvey Weinstein founded Miramax in 1979 alongside his brother Bob. The production company would eventually prove to be a critically acclaimed cash cow in Hollywood for decades to come. Their first release, though, was a rather inauspicious debut, a softcore porn film titled Goodbye, Emmanuel. Regardless, the two brothers began to earn a reputation in the film industry as savvy and tenacious players who refused to take no for an answer. By the late 1980s, Harvey and Bob had finally hit the jackpot that would send them into the star-studded stratosphere of the Hollywood elites. Buoyed by a credit line from Chase Manhattan, Miramax acquired the rights to 3 films that would become critical and commercial successes: Cinema Paradiso, Sex, Lies, and Videotape, and My Left Foot. My Left Foot would end up earning them 2 Academy Awards, including Best Actor for Daniel Day-Lewis. It was their first of many. The foundations for the Miramax empire were set, and Harvey Weinstein's reign had begun. In 1993, Disney acquired their company, bolstering their financial influence. Weinstein would go on to launch the careers of renowned filmmakers like Quentin Tarantino, David O. Russell, and Kevin Smith. Now, of course, they all vehemently disavow Weinstein while pleading their own decades-long ignorance to his many wrongdoings. Regardless, the films that Miramax produced and distributed weren't simply avant-garde cinema meant for pretentious crowds. Films like Good Will Hunting and Life is Beautiful remain timeless classics. Weinstein's triumph as a movie mogul granted him a kind of divinity in Hollywood. And that's not just hyperbole. An analysis of Academy Award speeches found that between 1966 and 2016, Harvey Weinstein was thanked as many times as God.
I would like to thank Harvey Weinstein.
Harvey Weinstein, who believed in us and made this movie.
Thank you, Harvey Weinstein. Especially Harvey.
I want to thank Harvey and Bob Weinstein.
I want to thank the Mashbuka Weinstein.
Harvey Weinstein, Bob Weinstein, God bless them.
His divine status in Hollywood soon allowed Weinstein to navigate his power and influence into the inner circles of the Democratic Party. Already crowned the most powerful man in Hollywood by Time, Weinstein, according to Insider magazine, soon became one of the most powerful figures in Democratic politics, even with a decades-long reputation for inappropriate behavior toward women. Weinstein's political influence wasn't just founded on his personal donations. He flourished as a Democratic power broker. His profound ability to fundraise millions upon millions of dollars in the film industry proved invaluable in politics for the likes of Bill and Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama. As the most powerful man in Hollywood, he could call upon the industry coffers and enlist virtually any and all celebrities for whatever political cause he deemed necessary. The scope of Weinstein's influence and connections can't be understated. Just a year before the scandal broke, Malia Obama, the daughter of the president, interned at the Weinstein Company. Even the very piece that broke the Weinstein scandal wide open described him unabashedly as a liberal lion who hosted a fundraiser for Hillary Clinton in his Manhattan home and who helped endow a faculty chair at Rutgers University in Gloria Steinem's name. Weinstein often acted with impunity at these events and had even physically assaulted actor Nathan Lane at a Hillary Clinton fundraiser in front of a number of guests, including Clinton herself.
He came backstage and like Tony Soprano and was screaming, you got to cut this, you got to cut that. I don't understand this sucks. And he started to push me into a corner and he's screaming at me and it crescendoed with, I'll ruin you. He said, I'll ruin you. And I said, you can't hurt me. I don't have a film career.
Weinstein's reputation in the Democratic Party reached its zenith when Harvard's Hutchins Center for African American Research awarded him the W.E.B. Du Bois Medal for his cultural activism, alongside Oprah Winfrey and the late Maya Angelou. The award is considered the highest honor for outstanding contributions to African and African American culture. Weinstein's ascension to the Hollywood pantheon for almost half a century would abruptly reverse course in the fall of 2017. Journalist Jodi Kantor and Megan Twohey wrote an extensive story in the New York Times that provided a detailed account of Weinstein's sexual predation over the course of decades. Now, that story would prove a major turning point for Weinstein's reign and would bring the Me Too movement to the national stage.
One question that we've pursued from the beginning is how did this producer manage to rack up 40 years of allegations?
Nobody was immune from sexual harassment. Even the most famous, shiny women and celebrities, including people like Ashley Judd and Gwyneth Paltrow.
Weinstein somehow amassed 40 years of sexual misconduct allegations with not so much as a blip on the Hollywood or Democratic Party radar. Perhaps more disturbing, though, is that Weinstein's perversions were protected by a cabal of feminist lawyers, including Lisa Bloom, daughter of Gloria Allred, who, according to Kantor and Twohey, were in the business of silencing women and helping Harvey Weinstein.
There are famous feminist lawyers who, it turns out, were in the business of silencing women and even helping Harvey Weinstein.
Lisa Bloom, who had previously represented women who claimed to have been sexually assaulted by Bill O'Reilly and Donald Trump, was reportedly instrumental in planting stories in the media to ruin the reputations of Weinstein's many accusers. Funny enough, Lisa Bloom's mother, Gloria Allred, would end up representing many of Harvey Weinstein's alleged victims. Shortly after Kantor and Twohey's piece in the New York Times, a subsequent piece in the New Yorker by Ronan Farrow opened the floodgates on Weinstein's depravity. 13 women came forward to tell Farrow that the producer had sexually harassed or assaulted them. The details were harrowing and included allegations of rape.
Because you're a Hillary supporter.
Yeah, I am a Hillary supporter, and they know that. We have all types. My mom started out for Donald Trump. She's turned to Hillary.
Harvey is supporting Hillary.
And you have raised money as well.
Clinton. Yes, you've raised money.
I have raised money.
It should come as no surprise, then, that Weinstein immediately reached out to his good friend Hillary Clinton in an attempt to kill Ronan Farrow's damning piece before it hit the presses, according to The Insider. In fact, Hillary Clinton's publicist, Nick Merrill, had contacted Farrow in hopes of halting the publication of his piece, stating that the story was a concern for us, according to The Insider. Farrow, of course, refused. Now risking tremendous political fallout, Clinton immediately distanced herself from Weinstein and condemned his actions, while also promising to donate Weinstein's campaign contributions from her presidential bid to charity.
I was shocked and appalled because I've known him through politics, as many Democrats have.
Within days of the damning stories in the New Yorker and the New York Times, Weinstein was expelled from the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences. 6 months later, the Weinstein Company would be forced to file for bankruptcy. Cantor, Toohey, and Farrow would all go on to receive the Pulitzer Prize for Public Service in 2018. Weinstein, on the other hand, was finished. The reigning king of Hollywood was now met with equal disdain and distance from the very people who once carried his throne. Meryl Streep, the very woman who had once referred to Weinstein as God at the Golden Globes in 2012 for all the world to see, she issued a statement in 2017 denouncing the man in full, while also pleading her own ignorance to the horrors Weinstein inflicted on women by arguing,
"Not everybody knew. Harvey supported the work fiercely, was exasperating but respectful with me in our working relationship."
However, Streep's supposed ignorance, along with countless others in Hollywood, seems to go against substantial evidence to the contrary. Kim Masters, the editor-at-large for The Hollywood Reporter, who'd been trying to expose Weinstein for years, insists that the decades of Weinstein's salacious behavior was simply an open secret and symptomatic of a culture of complicity in Hollywood that people allowed to go on.
It was a culture of a great deal of complicity. And, you know, in fairness, for many years, no one had said anything publicly. We in the media could not get anything on the record. No one would speak out. So you could sort of choose to say, well, innocent until proven guilty, or this is a rumor and I'm not really sure. But at the same time, people kind of knew.
In a lengthy and damning 2017 Facebook post days after the story broke, writer and producer Scott Rosenberg echoed Masters' claim of a pernicious culture of silence in Hollywood. He wrote, "And to me, if Harvey's behavior is the most reprehensible thing one can imagine, a not-so-distant second is the current flood of sanctimonious denial and condemnation that now crashes upon these shores of rectitude in gloppy tides of bullshit righteousness, because everybody knew. And do you know how I am sure that this is true? Because I was there, and I saw you, and I talked about it with you. You, the big producers, you, the big directors, you, the big agents, the big financiers, and you, the big rival studio chiefs, you, the big actors, you, the big actresses, you, the big models." So much of the condemnation against Weinstein from Hollywood rings hollow, given all the effusive praise that same crowd once heaped upon Weinstein, never mind their willful ignorance toward the man's many depravities. Still, given the unbridled power Weinstein wielded in Hollywood and in the Democratic Party, it's, at the very least, understandable why so many individuals like Rosenberg felt impotent against such powerful forces. Rosenberg, whose writing and producing credits include Con Air and, more recently, Venom, continues, "But, and this is as pathetic as it is true, what would you have had us do? Who were we to tell? The authorities? What authorities?"
And I think, when I filed the memo, I knew it was at great risk to my career and my professional track, potentially at risk to myself as an individual. But I think on some level, and I don't know still if it was naive or not, but I really hoped that if something was in writing, then when HR read it, they wouldn't be able to unknow that in the same way that when a young woman told me what happened to her, I couldn't unhear it.
Up until 2017, to speak out against Weinstein was all but to guarantee career suicide in Hollywood, and the likes of Rosenberg were hopelessly aware of such dire consequences. Reportedly, Weinstein regularly engaged in quid pro quo arrangements with young actresses. He had the power to choose who would get the role in the next big Oscar-winning movie, and the power to make sure someone never got a role again. Beyond actors, other producers, and agents, Harvey seemed to have a system built around him to facilitate his crimes. Former assistants and employees of his company now tell about the culture of silence in which they lived, setting up closed-door meetings, lying to Harvey's family, and constant emotional abuse were made to seem normal. A former assistant in Weinstein's London office said this about his behavior. "Now I think, didn't that seem strange, and didn't that seem wrong? But people were talking affectionately, if eye-rollingly about him. I didn't think I could expect better. If everyone else was okay with it, who was I to make a fuss?"
He was a master manipulator, and his moods changed very quickly, and you never knew whether you were you know, his confidant or whether you were going to be screamed at.
He had taken his clothes off, so he was naked. So he requested a massage from me, which I was reluctant to give him.
This isn't so much a story about one man's obvious crimes, but rather the system that allowed them to continue unobstructed for so long. As the Weinstein scandal continues to make global headlines, there remain countless examples of powerful people in Hollywood who sexually preyed upon the vulnerable, well beyond Weinstein. Director Bryan Singer has been accused for decades of sexual misconduct around boys. Worse, some are given a free pass and are not only excused by Hollywood, but celebrated as well. Woody Allen and Roman Polanski, for instance. Polanski drugged, raped, and sodomized a 13-year-old girl in 1977. Hollywood's response? An Oscar for Best Director in 2003.
And the Oscar goes to Roman Polanski for The Pianist.
In 2009, the film industry rallied around the infamous director and signed a petition urging his immediate release after he was arrested in Switzerland for his crimes in 1977. The names on that list included Martin Scorsese, Asia Argento, one of Weinstein's accusers, and Emma Thompson. Emma Thompson would later insist that the likes of Harvey Weinstein were just the tip of a corrupt and filthy iceberg.
You know, this man is at the top of a very particular iceberg, you know, and I don't think you can describe him as a sex addict. He's a predator. That's different.
Even stranger, Mia Farrow, journalist Ronan Farrow's mother, flew to London in 2005 to defend Polanski in a separate libel trial. Perhaps the most audacious claim came from The View's Whoopi Goldberg.
I know it wasn't rape.
Yeah, there is a statutory
child molest, maybe. I'm not sure. It was something.
No?
It was something else.
It seems that only when it's financially or politically expedient does Hollywood rally against the depraved behaviors of its own. It's funny, the standards those in Hollywood choose to hold to. Kevin Hart was fired as the host of the Oscars for a nearly decade-old tweet that some deemed homophobic. Meanwhile, the likes of Harvey Weinstein were allowed to prey upon their victims with virtual abandon behind the curtains, with little fear of reprisal, winning 81 Oscars in the process. On March 11, 2020, Weinstein was sentenced in New York to 23 years in prison. About a year later, he was extradited to California to face additional charges. Once it's all said and done, he could be spending the rest of his life behind bars. While justice is finally being served against him, the rise and fall of Harvey Weinstein is really about something much bigger. Harvey might be gone, but in a system that covered for him for so long, what else aren't we seeing? For the Daily Wire, I'm Megan Basham.